Hey, welcome back to the Ping Pong Flix Show. My name is Chris Wong. There is no daily news today, so that means I get to do my fun editorial video. Today's editorial video is going to be all about Justice League Part 2.
You guys are talking about the sequel, and that's hilarious. So that's good time. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, I know we didn't get any Justice League Part 1 yet, but I can't help thinking about Part 2 and where it's going to go. We kind of know where Justice League Part 1 is going to be, essentially the basics of it at least, but I want to tell you what I've learned about Justice League Part 2 so far. Stick around after the show, and I'm going to tell you how you can participate in a random future giveaway. Now, back in 2016, it was originally announced by Warner Brothers as a two-part film. Justice League is now a standalone film and not a two-parter, as said by Deborah Snyder and Charles Roven when they informed the press of that during a visit to the Leaves Den set of Justice League this past 2016. Later on during the set visit, the press had the chance to ask Zack Snyder about Justice League Part 2. Here's what he had to say about that. During that time, the question was, is the second Justice League movie still tethered to this? Is that something that you still plan to direct? It was sort of announced early on in a shareholders meeting, but it sounds like they're closing that off for now. Zack Snyder said, I think we still have a release date and that Part 1 is a completed movie. So, is there going to be a big cliffhanger? Zack Snyder says, hopefully there's some reason to go. The movie doesn't end and you go, okay, well, that's the DC universe. So, of course, back then it was just Justice League Part 1 and Part 2. Then it combined to Justice League Part 1 because of studio intervention. But now that we're getting the Snyder Cut, the question comes up, are we going to get Justice League Part 2 as well? But as you know, these following years, we have learned that there are actually probably 3 parts to that Justice League story. On an image that came out on Instagram, it listed out Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. For Justice League Part 1, it said Steppenwolf comes to Earth and is defeated by the Justice League. A boom tube opens and they meet Darkseid for the first time. They realize there's a bigger threat out there. For Part 2, it says the Justice League take the fight to Darkseid on Apokolips, teaming up with the Green Lantern Corps to take him down. Unfortunately, Darkseid defeats the League and heads to Earth, turning it into Batman's nightmare in BVS. Part 3, it says the survivors, Batman, a broken cyborg, and Flash start to come up with a plan to defeat Darkseid by going back into the past. Back in 2019, a fan named Jabin Matthews asked, was this the real arc? In which Zack Snyder actually replied and said, it's close, except it all happens on Earth. Now, obviously, this is kind of different from what Kevin said on the Fat Man Beyond show in regards to what he's learned about Justice League Part 2.
They saw Jim Lee breakdown boards for all 3 Justice League movies.
Really?
First movie was kind of what we saw. Fighting Steppenwolf, beating Steppenwolf, then like the fucking boom tube opened up and they saw Darkseid, and Darkseid saw them. There was a mini scuffle or not, depending on who you're talking to. Boom tube closes, that's the end of the fucking movie, with them all knowing there's something out there and we have to go. Justice League 2 was going cosmic, as they take the fight to Apokolips and New Genesis, presumably, but we know Apokolips. And the Lantern Corps was involved.
So obviously there may be some confusion there on whether Part 2 is on Earth or on Apokolips, but I'm just going to go with what Zack Snyder said, and that it's all on Earth. That means Part 2 could substantially look like Apokolips, but on Earth. So does that mean the invasion starts early? Well, before I get into how that's possible with the Green Lantern Corps, I'm going to give you the probably 3 characters that are going to be introduced within Justice League Part 2. Now, we know now that in BVS, that shot of Robin's suit in the Batcave was actually Dick Grayson. Right, Dick Grayson is dead in this world. We don't even get to know him, but that's okay because this is an older Batman, like the Dark Knight Returns Batman, so it makes a lot of sense. Well, which Robin was in the Dark Knight Returns Batman? That's right, Carrie Kelly. A few years back, Sam Leggett from Team JVS had asked them, Zack Snyder, was there a plan to bring back Richard after Flashpoint, or was the Richard Dick Grayson always meant to stay dead? Curious, please see this question. And Zack Snyder responded, stay dead till Carrie. So that, in my mind, means that Carrie Kelly could possibly be showing up in a Justice League Part 2 or even Part 3. But since we're talking about Part 2, and if the invasion starts already, I think Justice League Part 2 would be a great place to introduce to us to a Carrie Kelly. We also know that Ryan Choi was supposed to show up in Justice League Part 1, and Ryan Choi is definitely going to be the Atom. But were we going to see him turn into the Atom in Justice League Part 1? According to a fan question a few years ago, the fans asked, was Atom a part? And Zack Snyder says, just his beginning. So that means Justice League Part 1, we were going to introduce to Ryan Choi, but it was just going to be his beginning. So does that mean Justice League Part 2 will actually get to see his arc a little bit further and him actually becoming the Atom? I think that's pretty exciting. Now, there's also the question about the third character I was going to tease at, and that is actually Supergirl. Is Supergirl going to be in Justice League? Now, we're not clear if she's going to be in Justice League Part 1, so I'm just going to say that, if anything, we'll probably see her in Part 2, mainly because we've got a lot of cast of characters we already introduced in Part 1, Cyborg, Aquaman, and The Flash. So let's save up some of those characters to Part 2. During the Man of Steel watch party and the day that Zack Snyder announced the Justice League, he actually hinted at a certain Kryptonian that could have already arrived on Earth 20,000 years ago.
Those are the dead guys. And the, oh, what? One's open? So 20,000 years ago, some Kryptonian landed on Earth. The crew died except for one escaped. Looks like one escaped to me. I'm just saying. That was definitely by design. So stay tuned.
Now, this may sound crazy, and it may be just me, but it does kind of sound like that there's another Kryptonian that has landed here on Earth 20,000 years ago and could still possibly be around. She may be, or she or he may actually be in the history lesson, but I'm going to try to guess because of the Man of Steel prequel comic that we had before, and not that it really ties into it, that was Supergirl. That was Kara Zor-El that left that pod in the prequel comic. So if you put 2 and 2 together, I don't know. I think we're going to see Supergirl in Justice League at some time. Now, if she's in Justice League Part 1, I'm thinking she's probably only hinted in the history lesson or even shown in the history lesson, but where could she be? And I'm thinking, since this is a Darkseid story, might as well adopt that story where Darkseid actually takes her in, turns her into a Fury, and maybe we actually see a little bit of her at the end of Justice League Part 1 in the boom tube. So that would leave that we could actually see her in Justice League Part 2 and see an arc for her and possibly get her redeemed if she is one of the Furies, and if that's how she's being introduced into the Justice League. The next character, we're probably are going to get introduced to him in Zack Snyder's Justice League Part 1 and maybe a end of the movie kind of cameo, and that would be Green Lantern. Now, why do I think that he's probably going to be in Justice League Part 1? Because of the term Unite the Seven. They've always been marketing that the first movie has Unite the Seven in it. Zack Snyder had on Vero, he put the 5 for this picture, and someone asked, Superman is 6, then 7 is, and Zack Snyder replied with the green. Which Green Lantern? I have no idea. It could be Hal Jordan or John Stewart or both of them, but essentially the 7th member of the Justice League would have been Green Lantern. What makes it further interesting is how Green Lantern Corps is going to be incorporated into the Justice League story. Zack Snyder had put out a Vera post a year back and says, "Careful, Victor, if you go inside the mother boxes, they will F with you big time. That's not Father's Day, that's a trick." And in the background, you can see a giant ship. Well, in the comments on that, Brandon Verklas, a fan, asked, "Is that an apocalyptic ship in the background?" In which Zack Snyder curiously says, hashtag Green Lantern. Does that mean we're going to have Green Lantern ships in Justice League? What in the nightmare future? What are they doing there? That is crazy. And so that even explores a little bit more that the Green Lantern is probably going to succumb to the anti-life equation, and Darkseid actually utilizes them possibly to take over the Earth. Fan Carlos Digital had asked him this: do they travel with ships through the boom tube? And Zack Snyder replied with a quote, "We do it the old way. Ready, my armada." So in this sense, I kind of feel like Zack Snyder is trying to say that Green Lantern Corps was already compromised, that Darkseid had taken over Oa somehow, and possibly that's why the two Green Lanterns that are going to show up at the lake house with Bruce in it are going to tell him that Darkseid has taken over Oa and he's headed to Earth, which would actually make it much more sense that Kevin Smith thought that they're taking the fight to Apocalypse, taking the fight to Darkseid, when actually Darkseid takes the fight to Earth, brings his armada, changes Earth to look like an apocalypse, and the League and new members will probably have to go over to wherever Darkseid landed and take the fight to him, in which case that would make it ring true. Kevin Smith is right. They do take the fight to the apocalypse to Darkseid, but Apocalypse is already on Earth, and that way, that's why Zack Snyder says that is similar to his Justice League Part 2, but that it's all on Earth.
2 ends poorly, like Empire Strikes Back or Infinity War. So they go to space and get fucking defeated, and Darkseid goes to Earth and levels.
Not only we're going to have a cast of new characters, we'll probably see some deaths within Justice League Part 2 as well. And here's why that's the way I think it's going to go. Last year, a fan by the name of Josh Costella had put out this picture and says this: "Never noticed before, 3 crosses," in which this was the scene when Superman died, and you see 3 crosses in the background up on top of the hill. Zack Snyder says that's a reference to Justice League 2. Justice League 2. That's interesting. So now it gets a little bit complex because, as we know, in 2016 there was supposed to be Justice League Part 1 and Part 2, and they never ever mentioned Justice League Part 3. So maybe we're getting confused between 2 and 3. 2 and 3 maybe have been combined together to be Part 2. But still yet, this is a big bomb. There's going to be 3 deaths in Justice League Part 2. Or is one of the crosses actually represent Superman? And if that's the case, then 2 more people are going to die. The first one we already know is going to be Lois Lane. Lois Lane does get murdered so that Darkseid is able to change Superman into evil Superman in the nightmare future by utilizing the anti-life equation. That leaves Batman and Wonder Woman. A fan had asked a question on Vero by the name of Ignacio. "So I have this question, boss. You said the original idea was to sacrifice Batman against Darkseid, but you got to complete that after the 2-part movie was scratched?" Zack Snyder replied back, "We always had that plan. We would see that in the final chapter." So that would take care of Batman. If Batman was supposed to get sacrificed, it would have been the final chapter. And if it's going to be Justice League Part 1, 2, and 3, that means the final chapter would actually have to be Part 3. So then who dies in Part 2? Well, there's only one person left, and that is Wonder Woman. So if Lois Lane was in the Batcave and she's probably going to die in Justice League Part 2, then would she be there by herself? Wouldn't they have a bodyguard that would probably be big and strong enough to protect her? We know Superman wasn't there, or he would have been too late. Who else? Pretty much like a god that could probably protect her. Yes, Wonder Woman. So I think Wonder Woman is also sacrificed in part 2, trying to protect Lois, the key that prevents Superman from turning evil. So that's what I know so far about Justice League Part 2. I am so excited. I hope we get Justice League Part 2. I'm really excited to see Justice League Part 1. Click on that Justice League Season 1 on HBO Max, that first episode. Watch the heck out of those episodes, and maybe, just maybe, Warner Media would allow Zack Snyder, if he wants to continue on. Now comes the part where I tell you how to participate in a random giveaway in the future. You just have to click that subscribe button. Once I get to the 15,000 subscribers, I'm gonna host a random giveaway on that 15,000 subscriber video. Leave a comment on that video for your chance to win some awesome DC merchandise, including items in my Ping Pong Flix merchandise store. I hope you had a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you on the next daily news show coming up this week. If you absolutely love this daily dose of DC content, of movies, shows, and games, please click the like button, hit that subscribe, ring that notification bell, keep my hot dog light on, and I'll see you next time.